All right, good afternoon and welcome to our lunch and learn. It is 12 p.m. on the dot. As you all know, we start on time because in the film business, time is money. So today we have Rasul Boodoo who will take us through the role of a DOP as well as, of course, he has a really great presentation showing you all the look and feel. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat. I will try to answer as best as I can. And of course, we will enable at least a 15-minute window at the end of the presentation so that he can also answer your questions as well. So that's it from me. Enjoy our lunch and learn on the role of a DOP or cinematographer. Razul, over to you.
All right, thanks so much for the introduction, Leslie. I appreciate it. So hi everyone, I'm Rasul Boodoo. I'm a filmmaker. I trained in Canada and now I'm back in Trinidad. You all might be asking why. It's only because I love my country too much, and I only realized that after I went away. So now that I'm back, I just wanted to bring film to Trinidad in a way that's easily accessible to everybody. And I realized that we have so many great stories to tell down here, and we just don't have the technical ability really to share our visions to the rest of the world and even regionally, right? So hopefully this presentation kind of explains a little bit about what the DOP does and why it's important for everyone, right? And as you said, feel free to ask any questions in the chat and I'll answer as we go along, right? Can everyone see my screen? Perfect.
Yes, we
Okay, so
can.
this is the role of the DOP. So why me? I have a passion for filmmaking and storytelling. I have professional experience. I've worked internationally with companies and worked on films internationally as well. And I have an education. I graduated with a diploma of film production from Vancouver Film School. And a film is never really good unless the camera is an eye into the head of a poet. I really like this quote by Orson Welles because it kind of describes what the role actually is, right? We take words, we take writing on a piece of paper and turn it into something that people could look at and get that same feeling out of, right? And that's a mix of both creative and technical skills. So what do, right? They're the person responsible for turning the director's vision into images using lighting, grip, and camera to achieve the desired look while also enhancing the story, right? So it's a balance of a lot of different things, and the cinematographer is in control of three main departments, which are lighting, camera, and grip. So lighting is pretty self-explanatory. Lights, we have a bunch of different lights that we have access to on a film set. Camera, we have a bunch of different cameras as well. But the questions I get asked most about is to do with the grip department. What does grip really do? Grip is the department responsible for building all the rigs that we use, right? Even something as simple as a tripod or a light stand is the grip department's responsibility. The head of the lighting department is the gaffer. The head of the camera department is the first AC, and the head of the grip department is the key grip, right? So these vary a little bit with the names and the terminology. In some parts of the world, the camera operator is the head of the camera department, but it all depends on where in the world you're working. And the heads of all these departments report to the DOP. So the DOP, the DP, or the cinematographer, whatever you want to call them, is the head of all three of those departments, right? I have a little video here, but I guess we could continue going and just tack back to that when we get a chance. So I have here an image that is really low quality that has terrible lighting and no clear subject. So the person that took this image did not take the time to worry about all the aspects that we were talking about before with lighting, camera, and grip, right? So that's why we have poor images, right? In this image here, it's really underexposed. We don't have a clear subject again, and all they have is lights that are already built into the space. And we don't use those lights to shoot anything as cinematographers because we have no control over them. Another really bad example, inside here, the lighting is flat. It doesn't evoke any emotion. We don't know what's happening, and there's no clear subject in the frame. Something I want to touch on briefly that some of you may be privy to is CRI, the Color Rendering Index. What the color rendering index is a light's ability to reproduce color. So everyone has a phone, and if we take our phones and we have something with color, right? We shine a flashlight on that thing with color, and you see in this situation, the phone has a poor CRI. It can't render color properly, so it gets washed out. So the color of the light is what we see on the actual product or the subject, right? And that's not good for cinematography. So our lights have a really high color rendering index to make our skin tones, as the light is on my face right now, show up to camera like it actually is in real life, right? And it doesn't wash out like how this image is washed out on screen. So why is it important? Take anything a cinematographer does out of the equation and you don't have a movie, right? If you take lighting department out, it doesn't look like it should be a movie, right? The lighting, the contrast is not there. Take the camera department out, you can't really record anything. Or if you do, when you use a phone or another thing and you don't know how to use these settings properly, what's going to happen? You're going to get images that look like this with terrible quality. And if you take the grip department out, nothing could stand on anything properly. You're going to have broken equipment. You're not going to have light stands. You're not going to be able to position things in the way you want to. And all that is necessary to help the director's vision come to life. And if you don't have that, it's like a puzzle that isn't completed, right? And here on the right side of the screen, we have what's called a light meter. And this is really important when reading exposure. That's something else the cinematographer does on set in correlation with the gaffer, who's the head of the lighting department, to make sure that all your images are exposed properly so you don't get to post-production and have an image looking like this because your producer is going to scream at you. And Leslie could confirm that for me for sure. Moving on. Visuals matter in visual art. This is an image I took on a really cheap camera, $500 when I first started doing anything film or videography related. We have a clear subject, high quality image, and the light is actually not a stage light, obviously, it's just the sun, but the positioning of the light matters. So if you have a small budget, you don't have access to a lot of money, you don't have access to a lot of equipment, it can be done, right? It can be done. So don't let budget and equipment stop you because even with very basic equipment and no obvious lighting packages, you could just use the sun and positioning and framing to make something look good, right? In my opinion, I like this photo because of the framing of it and the lighting of it. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a whole scary, daunting process to make beautiful images. So now we're looking at some movies, right? As I said before, visuals matter in visual art. So we have Ran here. It's a movie from 1985 by Akira Kurosawa, a great Japanese director. And from this image already, we could tell what's happening. The yellow army on the left and the red army on the right are separated, so you could tell that they're not fighting right now, but they are opposing sides. Someone in the middle there is walking out of this building that's engulfed in flames and smoke. So they're looking at him, the attention, even for us as the audience, we know that it's drawn to him in the middle, and we see that something is happening. Something that they didn't expect to be happening is happening because they're stopped in their tracks and looking at this before them, right? So already from that, we've never seen the movie. We haven't gotten any information about what the movie is verbally, but we see what's happening on screen, and that's the beauty of cinematography. We could use that department to make an image with composition and different lighting techniques to tell a story without a word ever being spoken, right? Moving on, we have 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. A lot of you may know this one. It's a really popular movie. And this movie used cinematography really, really, really masterfully, I think, right? The lighting, the composition, everything tells the audience what they need to understand without a word being spoken. And that, what I just said there, I think is a really key point when speaking about cinematography. You want to convey meaning to your audience without a word ever being spoken. So what I encourage all of you guys to do is go out on the weekend when you all have time to be able to just shoot. Go out into the world and shoot different frames and see what works and see what doesn't. And in that way, you're going to build your eye for what looks good composition and lighting wise, right? Because in this, obviously, we see the color of the spaceman's suit is yellow and everything else around it is black and white. So where are we supposed to look? At the spaceman. Again, with the leading lines, we have lines leading all the way to the center of the frame. Where are we supposed to look? It's obvious, right? And now a lot of films that maybe aren't the best or best planned out films, what we see is that they have compositions and lightings that just don't speak to the audience. And we want to stay far away from that because the great films throughout history always use these techniques and they work. Now we have La La Land by Damien Chazelle. So this was actually shot on location. And remember when I said before how we don't use lights that are on location usually? In this case, we use the lights that are on location, but we have to be reminded that we don't use them necessarily to light subjects' faces. Because if Ryan Gosling and his clothing and everything was lit only by those lights, number one, we don't have any control. And what I mentioned before about CRI, the color rendering index, it would make the image look washed out and terrible. So all the lights that you see actually on a character or subject's face is lights that cinematographers and filmmakers prepare beforehand to make sure that the film looks the way it's supposed to look. Let me just check if the chat. Okay. This is Nosferatu 2024 by Robert Eggers. I don't know if any of you have seen this movie, but especially if you've seen it in the movie theater, where they have screens that are calibrated to see the proper dynamic range that is captured in camera. It just looks absolutely amazing, right? We see shadows on the face, we see the key on the other side of it. And what that tells us is that the cinematographer wants us to feel uncomfortable, in certain places, right? If you're in a dark room or you're peeking around a corner, there's light that will fall on your face in a certain way. If this subject was lit exactly like with his entire face with the same exposure on it, it's not going to tell any story. It's not going to give any emotion, right? But we see the emotion, we see the wrinkles in his face, we see the expression in the subject's face. And the subject is obviously looking at the hand, right? So composition and lighting, two very important aspects of being a cinematographer that cannot be overlooked in any shot. Now moving on to one of my favorite directors, Wong Kar-wai, right? He is just amazing at cinematography. I look up to him in every aspect of filmmaking, but specifically cinematography. He's a director, but he works really, really closely with his DP, and his DP uses the story, which is something else that's really important when you're trying to make a film. He uses the story to convey messaging through the imagery. So what we have to do, and I'll show you guys a little bit later, is script breakdowns. So as a cinematographer, the producer is going to give us the most revised version of the script, and we're going to have to break it down. We're going to have to highlight what the subject is doing, what emotion is in the scene, what natural light sources there are that we're going to have to replicate for the film, different stuff like that. And his cinematographer does that really, really well. And you see the light that's on our subject's face right now, and in the back, how there's lights going up and down this entire strip here on this, speed ramp escalator type thing. This light on her face is not one of those lights. They replaced those with bulbs that are high CRI so that the color on the actual subject is going to be what it's supposed to be.
Hi, Rasul. I don't mean to cut
Hmm.
in. We have two questions that I think you might need to stop and discuss for continuation. Dynamic range, and they're asking what is composition.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if I'm seeing the chat right now.
Yeah, you may not
Probably
be
because
able
I'm
to with the full screen, correct?
okay, so dynamic range and composition.
Mhm.
Okay, so actually perfect. This shot is really good to explain that. So the two things that you'll ask about actually go hand in hand, right? It's all about what we actually see on the final image. Dynamic range. If you all have ever taken a photo with your camera on your phone and there's a really bright spot and there's a really dark spot, you're gonna see that the darks are just completely black and they have no information like what's happening on the back of this guy's shirt right here. And the whites are just completely blown out. There's no information in the sky here that we could pull back in post-production. right? So dynamic range cameras like the Arri Alexa, Mini LF, those cameras, the Sony Venice line, they're built with really high dynamic range sensors. And what that means is that they get the highlights, the really bright parts of the image, and the really dark parts of the image with information. When I say with information, what I mean is that you could see the folds on his shirt in the back here. You could see the color properly. All of those little pieces of information that you want to get in the frame. And in the sky here and stuff, you're gonna see clouds and all the stuff that make up the sky. So why don't we see it in this image right now? This is a finished image of a movie. Why don't we see it here? Because sometimes we choose to dial back on the dynamic range, right? So if we saw all the wrinkles in his shirt and we saw all the clouds in the sky and we saw all the bark and the texture on this tree, it could take away from the story. So what's on screen is important, but what's even more important in most cases is what's not on screen, what we choose to ignore and choose to leave out. So we want to have the entire image, seeing the bark hair, seeing the back of his shirt, seeing this. And when we move over to color grading is when we could dial it back and lose the information here. We have it, but we don't need it. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So you said dynamic range and composition. So there's a bunch of different compositional techniques that filmmakers use, and it's just how the subject and the environment interact with each other in relation to the camera. Composition, let me use this one, right? So this one is using a very basic compositional technique called the rule of thirds, right? So imagine a grid line, or I mean, on your phones, you have this too, right? The grid lines that exist on the screen, there's two vertically and two horizontally. So if we had the grid lines on this image, we would see that the grid lines touch, they meet at four distinct points on the screen, and one of the points is his eye. And for some reason, right, the human brain likes the golden ratio, and the rule of thirds is derived from the golden ratio. So you want to be able to attract your audience to certain part of the images, to certain parts of the image. So by employing those techniques, you do that, right? We see, and even the framing like this, right? You see the composition of this image, right? How it's composed. The hand of the vampire Dracula is on this chair looking thing, and his face is looking at the hand. So what we did there was tell a story with that image. The composition tells us that this guy is over here, and really close to him, in front of him, is Dracula's hand, and his eyes point towards what the subject of the shot actually is. You could even look at great painters throughout history, and what you would see is that they use these compositional techniques to guide the viewer's eyes in different ways. So filmmaking is an art form of all art forms. You have to use painting, you have to use design, you have to use sound, music, all different forms of art to come together and actually build out what a film is going to be. Um, and yeah, so it all plays hand in hand with one another. So that's kind of just a brief overview of what composition is and the elements within the frame that guide our eyes and guides the audience to understand what the story is. So I would recommend that you guys actually look at great paintings as well to understand how framing, especially in a shot that can't really move like a picture frame, how those great painters use composition to direct the audience's eyes in a certain way. Moving on now, I'm going to get into the deliverables really soon, like what the cinematographer needs to provide to the producer for them to, like have a package of what the cinematographer's plan is. This is just a collage of images on the most recent film I worked on called Reflection. So on the bottom left corner here, we see a board meeting that we were having. We presented I think this was the concept meeting where all of the artists came together and actually just spoke about what the concept of the film was, what the plan was, and what the story beats were, so that we could make sure that we're hammering in the goal of the director, right? The top left was the set 12 hours away from shooting. This was the night before the shoot, and my gaffer, my key grip, like everyone on the set, no matter what their role was helping the production designer and the art team paint and finish build this set. So this is what it looked like 12 hours before, and this little snippet of an image in the middle here is what it looked like 12 hours later. So that just goes to show how much work it takes to make something really, really, well, seemingly simple, right? Down here is the slate. I mean, I'm sure you guys know what a slate is. It's just to record what is actually happening and what scene and what take we're on. So we have the post-production team understands what we were shooting at that point in time. And then this is the camera that we were using. This is my camera operator, Ryan, doing the duck face in the back here, our sound guy, Carlos, and my gaffer, Jack. So we're in the middle of a field here for one of these shots, and obviously the director of photography, DOP, cinematographer, whatever you want to call it, me is here with my team discussing what we're gonna do for the next shot moving on as well. All right, so this is the name of the movie, Reflection, a shot in 2025. If we have time, I can show you guys a few clips of it afterwards. And now we're gonna move on to deliverables. Oh no, deliverables, this big scary thing that me and so many other cinematographers really, really don't enjoy doing too much because we have to take all the information and all the ideas inside our head and actually turn it into written words and numbers on a page. So let me just pull that up here. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yes,
Um,
someone is asking, what is a story beat?
Story beat. Okay, story beats. Um, Story beats are usually found like done by the director, but the cinematographer needs to know about them too because lighting changes happen during story beats, camera movements happen during story beats. So if you have an argument in a kitchen, right? How the people walk around within the kitchen, how they speak to each other, the direction that the camera is moving, everything that happens visually that changes the trajectory of the story is a story beat. I'm going to say that again. Everything that happens that changes the directory of a story is a story beat. Um, so yeah, those two things are really important to be aware of all the time because if a major story beat happens and everything visually stays the same, the audience isn't gonna pick up on it as easily, right? And let me screen share here. Okay, question. Do you meet with the colorist beforehand and have them create a lot for you to shoot with on set, or do they have to work with whatever log or raw file you deliver? So that is actually in the deliverable package. A lot of people leave it to post-production. I actually don't. With the RE that we were using to shoot this film on, what I did is I actually uploaded it onto a flash drive and uploaded it into the RE. So while I was on set actually filming this, I could have seen what the final image was going to look like. Because for those of you who know, the log picture profile kind of ties into dynamic range. It's a really bland picture profile that gives you as much information as possible, but it doesn't show you how the actual final image is going to look. So I created a lot before and I sent it to my post-production team and my colorist, and we sat down and hashed out everything that had to be done to get that color in post-production. Yeah, let me just see if there's any more question. Like, how does Grey's Anatomy and Chicago Med is shot? Is that a story beat? Kind of. In those TV shows, what I realize is that they have like a formulaic kind of way of shooting. It's not similar to movies. They have beginning, middle, and end in the most basic form possible. So if you watch those medical shows and stuff, you're gonna see at the beginning, there's like doctors speaking about personal issues, right? Their relationship arcs in the broader story and everything. And then we get a shot of someone getting into an accident and rushing into the ER, and then they deal with that, and then there's some problem with them that they've never seen before. They fix the relationship problem that the doctors personally have. They find a solution for the patient, and then they wrap up with some kind of comedic ending. That's just the flow of that. So those are story beats, but in film we try not to just have the replication happening too much because if you replicate in that format, you're not going to be able to retain your audience for really long. One more question, and then I'll share the deliverable
I'm
package.
not going to say you're getting some really great questions, but I also
Yeah,
want them to understand the deliverables first. So let's touch on the deliverables, and I
I'll
think
come
we'll
back
get
to your
back to yeah,
questions.
because I really want them to understand that element of it too.
No problem.
But great questions. We'll
So,
answer it.
yeah, and guys, just keep sending questions. I'll go
Yeah.
through after. All right, everyone could see this package on my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Reflection Cine Bible, that's what they made us call it because we had to eat, sleep, and breathe this package. This is the entire cinematography plan for this film. And as you can see on top here, it's 98 pages long. It was 127 pages long, but I had to dial it back in. So yeah, let's get started. This is the table of contents,
Hold on.
and
Sorry, Rasul. When you say deliverables, explain what that means. It means who are you delivering to and what, so just start off there and then you can go into it.
so the deliverables is just so that your producer has an understanding of what's going on in your department. So production design, assistant directing, directing, all of those are different departments within the film set, but each of them have their own deliverable packages they need to present to a producer. And this is something I see really lacking in Trinidad specifically. We just go on set and then we just feel like, oh, I want a light over there, and oh wait, that doesn't work because we see the light in frame. And that can't happen on an actual film set because when you're spending millions of dollars, and if you want investors to spend millions of dollars, nobody is going to give you money if you don't plan it out properly. So, yes, it's like a difficult, boring thing to do to make this whole package or whatever, but you need to do it so that you have consistency. And consistency is key. Being on time is one thing that Leslie mentioned earlier that I 100% agree with. If you're if you mess up on any of those small little aspects, then your whole film is just gonna fall apart. So the deliverables are comprised of story description, script breakdown, lookbook, look table, reference films, camera specs, questionnaires from your directors and different departments so that you're all on the same page, budget, camera test list, and a bunch of other different things that we're going to touch on, right? And I just want you all to pay attention to one thing. If you'll see I over here omitted, that is really, what did I do? That is really important, right? Why did I leave something out? As I said before, on screen, what you leave out is almost as important as what you put in. That is really important when you're planning too. I don't want to send my producer a document that's comprised of 200 pages of things they don't need to worry about. My producer just needs exactly what they need to see to understand how much money I'm spending, what people I need in my department, and my plan for the actual shoot on the day. So even though this looks like overkill, this is the bare bones, what's necessary for what the producer needs to understand my department. And you have to think about it from their perspective. They're getting these like size of packages from every single department. Like it's a lot, a lot, a lot for producers to deal with. So this is the lookbook. We're going to start off. This is the story description, just so the producer understands that I understand my story. The script breakdown that I was talking about. So I color coded it into scene lighting, shots, inserts, and camera movements, and wrote notes. So you'll see all the different colors and all the different notes that I wrote here, just so that the producer understands what my interpretation of the film is and making sure that that lines up with what the director's vision on a whole is. And the thing with this, right? So if at the top of the page it's kind of small, but you'll see yellow revision. The script changes all the time during pre-production. All the time, all the time, all the time. Like you're gonna go to sleep one night and do this entire thing and then wake up in the morning and there's a different script revision. We had 10 script revisions in the span of like a week. So in the morning time, you do this entire thing, and then you have to rebuild the entire script breakdown to understand that new revised version of the story in the afternoon. And that's just something you have to do because if you miss parts, miss scenes, and miss setups, then your whole film is just gonna fall apart. So the log line, which is really important, and I recommend if y'all are also pitching films to producers and financiers that y'all should do this. Just the entire film at a glance, right? At her grandmother's funeral, a young woman reconnects with her estranged family and confronts a ghost from the past, revealing painful truths, generational secrets, and the healing powers of choosing yourself. Simple, to the point, and it explains the entire story. So the theme, the genre, vision statement, all of these things, you're probably thinking, wow, they're really like creative aspects of this. I didn't think that the cinematographer would need to provide these things. But it's important because if the different departments don't come together and understand the story, how the director wants it to be told, then the production designer is going to be telling story A, the director is going to be telling story B, and the cinematography is going to be telling story D. It just, if it doesn't add up like that, then you're going to have a film with a bunch of different elements that don't look like they belong together. Vision statement, what I want to make the film look like based on what the director needs. More vision statement, camera work department, another vision statement, lighting department, another vision statement on the tone for each of the different scenes. It looks like overkill, guys. Believe me, it is not. This, I have referred to this numerous times on shooting, and it has helped me through spots where you feel like you can't get out of. So, vision statement for the magical world. In this film, we had two separate looks. We had a really magical, romanticized world in the night when she's speaking to the ghost. And in the daytime, it was really like nostalgic family setting. So we had two different reference films for that as well. So all this is just vision statements on the similarities and the differences between the styles and different things like that. Visual, language, and aesthetics. So the tone and the mood. This is all just like a mood board. Tone and mood again with the nighttime, the look for the daytime, the look for the nighttime, and then the color palettes that we chose. So the color palettes didn't really apply to me. And take this into consideration, guys, another really key point here. Why is this important? Because this is the color palette that the production designer was using. Gonna keep it short. The production designer is the person that deals with all the actual set things, the props, the set decoration, the colors of the painting of the walls, things like that. And you all know that light interacts with colors in a certain way, right? So we already have the lights that deal with high CRI output, high color rendering output to get the actual colors of the different set decorations and stuff, like how it's supposed to be looking, and not leave like weird different hues and tones that we don't want in our image. Um, so when we're looking at like we want to get yellows, browns, and stuff like that for the daytime, I can't go now and put orange light or brownish looking light on those stuff because it's just gonna make the image look too brown or too washed out with a certain color. So the reason I have this here is so that I know what color lights that I could put into the space to light it in a way that does not discount or take away from what the production design team is doing. And same thing for the nighttime. Aspect ratio and contrast ratio. As we saw earlier, remember with the Nosferatu image that I showed on the presentation, the contrast ratio. So one side of his face was really lit and the other side was dark. That's just what that is. So even right now, I don't know if y'all could see my face. One side is lit and then the other side is a little bit darker because the light source is over there. If I was on set and shooting this for like an actual movie, I would use a light meter and make sure that the contrast ratio, that the right side, if I'm going for 4:1 ratio, is 4 times brighter than my left side. Or in the nighttime, 8 times brighter than the left side. So contrast ratios are a whole other thing, and that could be a presentation by itself. So can aspect ratios, but you're all pretty familiar with like the 16:9 frame. There's just a bunch of different aspect ratios, frame sizes that we use on film sets to display different emotions and different themes. So the 4:3 is nostalgic because that's what they used to use back when the first digital cameras came out. And then the nighttime is 2:39 to 1. And that is just an extreme widescreen, like what you're gonna see in Movie Town or cinema if you go. The reason we chose this is again because of the themes of the story. We wanted daytime to feel nostalgic and nighttime to feel otherworldly. So that's why we chose these two aspect ratios. So I had to explain to the producer why I chose those aspect ratios. Daytime lighting with reference images and movie references as well, nighttime lighting, and a look table. So this is just how I was going to achieve what lighting styles I wanted to achieve, camera movements I wanted to achieve, what filters would be on in front of the lens to give the movie a certain look. And then at the top here, really tiny, you see some numbers. Those are just the scene numbers that would look like that style. So reference films, we had Totem, which is a Mexican film, and we just liked how natural the lighting looked in this and how it just all came together. For that film, it looked really natural and not staged, and that's what we wanted for the daytime scenes. And Last Night in Soho is the like really really like magical realism style that we were going for. Scene breakdowns, pretty self-explanatory, going through lighting, camera production design for the daytime and the nighttime scenes. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and we actually write these scenes based on the most revised version of the script into the presentation for the producer as well. Um, we're just gonna skip past a little bit, and then we have camera specs. So we're using the Arri Alexa Mini LF, a beautiful camera, but you have to know what you're shooting with and understand what the settings mean. We had to calculate sensor size, the size of the sensor for how big the image is going to be, the recording codec. So I heard that someone mentioned log earlier. So that is kind of where that whole thing comes in. What we're actually recording into the camera, what type of footage we're recording into the camera, format, for what format of footage, the resolution that we're going at, and the minimum recording resolution if we wanted to go higher resolution on certain shots. So this is the 4:3 aspect ratio, and this is the 16:9 aspect ratio over here. And this is the resolution we would get out of both of them. And this matters because depending on where you're going to show your film, whether that be in a cinema or on streaming services, you need to have a resolution that works for that medium. So this is some of the same thing, and this is just technical specs that DOPs need to know to properly operate the camera. I wouldn't really go too much into it because there's a lot of numbers and calculation, but yes, this is something important for us as well. LUTs. So on the right is Rec 709, and on the left is my LUT for magical realism. We can see the colors on the right look pretty normal, and colors on the left look really vibrant. That's what we were going for. LUTs for the daytime. Normal on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side, they're kind of more muted and pastel-y kind of colors. Again, that's what we were going for. And then the two lots compared. Right side is the nighttime with the magical looking shots, and the left side is the daytime with the really muted normal tones. And the director is Mexican. And what she wanted was to make the film look like the daytime side of the film look like she was home in Mexico. So we needed to use those muted pastel colors to replicate that. Lens choices, this could be a whole other presentation by itself, but just what focal length we're going to go, if we're going to go narrow shots or wide shots, questions that different departments had asked me, and then the mirror. So this movie is called Reflection, and there's a mirror that the character uses to speak to the ghost through. And I don't know if y'all have ever worked with mirrors on a set. It's not nice. They could break really easy. They're difficult to find duplicates of, and they reflect everything. So all your light stands, all your camera equipment and stuff need to be at a position that does not reflect. So that's where camera tests come into play. These are all camera test images that we did with our assistant director, Mariana. And we did stuff with the mirror, without the mirror, just to see how it looks using the camera and the same like camera and lighting packages we're going to use on the day. Oof, now the budget that I've revised 7,000 times. This one was really interesting. I think we had a budget of like $25,000 Canadian dollars for this whole film. So this is the rental of all the lenses, the cameras, and every single piece of equipment on the set. Camera test list, what we needed to test, the different variables, lighting diagrams. So Lazian wanted me to touch on this specifically because it is something that streamlines production. So for every single one of these scenes, this is scene 6, we had a lighting diagram. So this is the set that we were working on. This is where the cameras were going to be placed, and then the lights that we were using to light the set are all around, right? But we need to make sure that they're out of frame. So you'll see a lot of them are actually on the set. We use this grip clamp called a cardellini to clamp onto the set itself and use the lights overhead so that they don't show up on frame. And then we had windows here, so we shot HMIs and tungsten lights through them to be able to fill the space with light in a way that wouldn't show up on camera. Dolly tracks, the same thing where the camera is going to move. And then over here, you're going to see different T-stop numbers. That's just something for exposure. That could be a whole other presentation, again, but it's just to try to plan what the audience is going to see in the final image. We want to get an exposure reading of 4.0, T 4.0 there, and we want to get a reading of T 1.0 on that side of the subject's face. And I just have to go with my light meter and read both sides of the subject to be able to adjust the lights accordingly. Same thing here, we had a green screen shot. And then camera test footage, the updated version of the budget. So you all could just see how much these things actually cost in Canadian dollars. Really, really long budget. And then this, so if it gets lost or anything, then that's me. I'm liable for it. Even though I might not ever touch any of these things, the people under me, under my departments, are liable for those too. And more lighting diagrams. So yeah, just how the camera is going to move in different spots, in different locations, how many individuals are actually on set in front of the camera, practical lights that we're going to use. And we have to label all these things too, because I mean, if I just show someone this image and we don't actually label them, then we're not gonna know what we're shooting with and what we're working with. We're just gonna see image of a light, image of a light, image of a fan. We don't know what anything is doing. So you all could see here that it says low setting, the gel that I'm going to put, the intensity of the light for all the different lights, for all the different setups, for all the different scenes. And believe me, it's not overkill because when you're on set and you don't know what to do, you need something to refer to. So that's just all of these. And then this is the last one, the coverage diagram. So yeah, that's a deliverable package, and I can assure you it is extremely necessary, especially when you have a bunch of different people and a production worth how much of a dollars is depending on you. Your producer needs to know that you could deliver on all of these different things. So we have 2 minutes before I go to questions. I'm just gonna quickly show you what happened on set that day. I'm gonna screen share this and tell me if y'all could hear it, okay? Let me see, share with audio. Right. Tell me if y'all are hearing it. Okay, guys. So we're currently moving into production on Reflection. And it's a mess, guys. It's a mess, but
It's
we
not a
are
mess.
capable.
It's
We
not
are
a mess.
capable and we can do this.
It's not a mess.
Mariana's way. So this is the set. I'm gonna show you all what the set looked like 12 hours away. Like we're literally there the night before with no sleep, and this is what the set looked like. This over here on the floor right now is my gaffer, and she is supposed to be pre-lighting before the day starts, and she's painting the set. Like a million different things happen, and this is why planning is necessary. Our production designer did not take like time into consideration, and they waited till last minute. So when we should be pre-lighting and setting up camera and different stuff like that, everyone is rushing to paint this set. Everyone's singing. That's our production designer there singing and making a fool of himself, laughing around the place, and not taking this seriously. That's why we need to plan and take things seriously because when one side is lacking, then the whole thing just gets thrown off, you know? So this is my gaffer. She just doesn't know what to do. She's nervously laughing at this point because we need to light, and the production designer is still painting the set. So yeah, I was just walking around at that point. This is my key grip. He was also painting as well. Really ridiculous, but what are you gonna do? And this is how he set looked. So this is just a note for everyone, no matter what department you're in. Just try to please stay focused during the day of shooting because a lot of things could happen, and even tiny things when they get thrown off, it could cause the entire film and the entire set just to, be off and uncomfortable for people to work in. And just one more really quick video. Okay, I don't know, it isn't opening. All right, okay. I guess we could just move on to questions now. Um,
Yes, you have a few questions.
yeah, so any Steadicams used on this film when you do decide it's appropriate for a tool like a Steadicam? Okay, so Steadicams are really, really expensive. I don't know if we have any locally or any operators locally that I know of,
Yeah,
but for
he's a study come up that's asking the question.
Oh,
Christian.
okay, okay, perfect. Christian. Okay, I'll take note of that. But yeah, so Steadicams are for scenes with a lot of movement inside of it. And how do we decide if we need a Steadicam or not? It just depends on the story that we're trying to tell. So if we have a running sequence and it's really hectic and we want the camera to be shaky and stuff, we're not going to use a Steadicam there because the Steadicam stabilizes the image. But in the case of we're telling a love story and two people are running through a field and we want to make that shot as stable as possible, but the camera needs to be moving really quickly. It all just depends on story. So in that case, we would use a Steadicam. So we're using tools that help tell our story the best possible way. Every creative department makes their own version of this document. Yes. So mine was like camera related, lighting related, grip related. Every department does it. Assistant directing, production design, everybody does it to a T so that we're all on the same page. And that document gets revised a million times. I can't tell you how many times I was in the studio up until like maybe 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we have like camera tests the following morning at 9 a.m. And I'm just revising, revising, revising this document. Why you say in Trinidad like we have not done major productions here? I'm not saying that y'all haven't. Like I have been to the movies to see a bunch of the local films and I've enjoyed them. But in Trinidad, we are lacking. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. We are lacking in the planning and preparation for films and in the people that have the technical skills to actually deliver on these types of productions. So we're getting somewhere, Leslie is spearheading this operation, and I feel like Film TT is doing a lot for the local community of filmmakers. But we need to remember that if we want to make it on the international stage and tell stories that the entire world could resonate with, we have to be on a certain level of professionalism. What advice would you give someone just starting to get into film and cinematography? Well, just learn as much as you can. Go out and shoot as much as you can to get an understanding of what you think looks good, how light works, how camera works, and how different aspects of cinematography work together. So just try it out yourself. If you have a phone light, a construction light, any type of light or camera to work with, just mess around with it, ask your friends to help you, and come up with something and keep posting, and you'll get better over time. So within the international film industry, everything is clearly defined as terms for different types of shoots, etc. Within the local industry, where some involved may not get the correct terminology at hand, how does that limit efficiency in the creation of a film? So talking about terminology and understanding and communicating on set, all of us have walkies on an actual set, so we could talk. I could be like, "Yo, PD, production design. I need a curtain flown up to me right now." All of those terms that everyone understands. I had an entire class about this, about the terminology on a film set, because it is really important. Even stuff like saying copy, I don't hear that on Trinidadian sets, and it's dangerous. So when we have lights, um, we have to say striking before we turn the lights on so that no one gets blinded. These lights aren't like a regular flashlight. They're really, really, really powerful, bright lights that could hurt someone's vision. So when my gaffer's up on a ladder 20 feet in the air, rigging a light onto the top of a set, gaffer's gonna scream striking, and everyone's on set's gonna say copy so that no one is looking at that light ready to get blinded. Even something like camera on the move so that everyone knows to stop what they're doing, don't move any ladders or lights around so the camera doesn't get injured or broken, right? Because the camera body itself without a lens is $50,000 US. I don't think anyone wants to pay that price, right? So just the efficiency to do with terminology. I mean, y'all could find like little videos online of film lingo and stuff to kind of learn, but that's something we need to implement locally as well. Let's see. So you bounce between LUT and log, false colors on set. Yeah, LUT, log, and false colors just to make sure that everything is exposed properly. But that also kind of lies to you. False color isn't really a proper representation of what it should look like or is going to look like. So what we need to do on set is actually have a light meter to read the light on different sides of the people's face and then adjust the lens to that exposure so that we have properly exposed images because a monitor can definitely lie to you. Let me go down. I think I have some new questions. Is there a starter camera you recommend? I had a Canon M50 and that's what I took the shot with the boat and the greenery in the background with. I love that camera. It was really great. Sold it recently, but that is a really good starter camera. Can you explain the role of a colorist and where you can study it? Study it online because coloring, we have a lot of great colorists internationally, and we use colorists a lot in film because